The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Speaker, I join with, as a Member of Parliament in Canterbury with other colleagues in welcoming the passage of the bill. I think it is interesting, though, to recast a little history. I commend Minister Brownlee. I know Minister Brownlee and my good self have often had a colourful and wide-ranging relationship, and occasionally we've crossed swords in the best of humour I know. And I tell you more, I could go on for hours, sir, but I'm sure the Speaker would fall asleep with some of my anecdotes. However, I will say, sir, that Minister Brownlee is not, to use the Thatcherite expression, not want for turning. And he is not a person who has, over many years, been willing to change his mind on various things. But I do commend him in this, an epiphany, yes, maybe a road to Damascus, a good Catholic like me, a road to Damascus a movement. But I do commend him on this occasion. I do note that in the Select Committee, those members, some of whom have spoken, actually opposed the changes that were put forward by Megan Woods and others, and I have to commend Minister Brownlee as the person who stepped in and said, no, we're going to listen and we're going to make those changes. It is difficult in politics to say, well, there may be somebody with a better idea or a better way to do things. None of us have a monopoly on knowledge in these instances, and Minister Brownlee has indeed recognised, after 5 years, but nonetheless recognised, that we have really smart people in Canterbury. We always have incredibly entrepreneurial people who have demonstrated, not just talked about it, but demonstrated the wealth of knowledge and commitment that they have to our province, and have always been willing from day one, if they were allowed to do it over the last 5 years, to step up and say we're prepared to have a go and work our guts out to get our province and our city back off its knees. I would point out, just for the record, that they haven't really had that opportunity in a great way over the last 5 years. However, let's be positive about this. New World Order, this bill, I think, will allow, if implemented correctly, will allow the unleashing of that energy and those smart folks in Canterbury to lead that recovery from grassroots, to have a locally led recovery, to have local and substantial input, which is not just dealt with via lip service, but actually makes a massive and real and high quality contribution to the recovery of our province. That is something that has been a huge chasm, a huge gap over the last 5 years. People have talked about the Margaret Mayhew Playground. People have talked about in this House the Metro Sports facility and anchor project, which we don't have. People have not talked about, for instance, the great need, and we've got a couple of tourism experts over there, for a convention centre in Christchurch. We desperately need that as an anchor project, because we know there are millions of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of capital sitting there, won't sit there forever, waiting to be unleashed in respect of infrastructure and hotels. We know, of course, that one of our biggest supermarket chains wants to put a massive supermarket, I'm told, right in the centre of Christchurch, but needs to know where the centres of population will be, where the business activity will be. Will there be a stadium? Will there be a convention centre? Will these promises come to pass, so that the private sector, sir, who are far better at these projects than I'd wager any bureaucrat or politician, can unleash that capital and build build their businesses and bring life back into the centre of our city. So I welcome the bill, and I say this to my St Bede's counterpart, Mr Brownlee, in all seriousness, that I'm gratified and grateful that he's been prepared to listen to alternative points of view, that he's been prepared to say, okay, we're going to gut this bill and we're going to insert these changes which ourselves and Christchurch City Council and others proposed, that he listened to submission after submission from people that said, look, we want to lead our recovery as a city, as a province. We want to lead it as local people. We want to take responsibility, greater and greater responsibility, because those local people are actually, sir, the experts, because they live there, because they've lived through tragedy, they have lived through adversity. Many continue to do that. They've battled every day, many of them, sir, to survive and to look after their families in pretty strenuous social and economic circumstances, and they've lived it. I said when I had the spokesperson role when the earthquake actually struck that I hoped we didn't get an army, no disrespect, of Wellington bureaucrats parachuted in with their clipboards and their pen holders going tut, 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 and we have all the answers. And sadly, sir, I'd argue that we did exactly that over the last 5 years. And it does surprise me that many of the folks on the other side who purport to be great free marketers, those who just want to let the juices flow, as it were, whether that be in a business sense or economically or socially, allowed that to happen. Kiwis are smart. Kiwis in Canterbury are smart. People who have empathy are those who lived it, breathed it, ate it, dealt with it, survived through it every day for 5 years. Who live with it today, sir, who lived with it on Valentine's Day when we had the big shove, when we have them every couple of days and people get scared. And there are people in our province, sir, who are genuinely scared. There are massive mental health issues, sir, and I hope that because we in politics, especially on this side, get accused of every time we raise issues, we get accused of being political. Nice little cheap shot by some that actually labels and negates any of the positive input. We know in mental health, sir, we know that kids and adults every day are struggling. We know our DHB, sir, is under massive strain. For those who thought in any conventional sort of disaster, you throw a few dollars at mental health for a couple of years, Christmas comes along, summer, the sun's shining and everybody's happy again, they haven't picked off the case studies around the world of natural disasters that tell you quite clearly, and they haven't listened to clinicians and experts that tell you quite clearly, sir, that it will be 10 or 15 or possibly 20 years before some of these folks work these problems through in medical terms, get it out of their system, or if they can't, sir, learn to cope in their own way. To do that, they need assistance, they need mental health resources, and I implore the government through this bill as an opportunity to say so, sir, to address those issues. If anybody thinks they've gone away, go and talk to your local high school, primary school, intermediate school principal and ask what's happening to many kids in our community. If anybody thinks those mental health issues have gone away, make sure you're in town the next time we have a good shove, like we did on Valentine's Day, and wander around and talk to people, many of whom, I could use some vernacular but I won't, are scared, sir, very scared, and it just brings that nightmare back again and again. Now, these aren't the fault of politicians, this is the fault of Mother Nature, sir. This is the fault of Mother Nature. But nonetheless, it exists. And nonetheless, sir, it is real. So I hope out of this bill, as local folks, sir, have a greater say, have greater standing with the government and with the minister, whoever he or she may be, and ministers who are involved within the intertwined portfolios that will deal with the earthquake situation going forward, that I hope that those people, those respected community leaders, are listened to. I had a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, I know with other colleagues, and even Pete Townsend, the Chief Executive of the Chamber of Commerce, said to us very clearly some weeks ago that he was deeply concerned about the mental health issues and the lack of resources. I hope, sir, he may not feel he can say those things publicly, but I've helped him out with that. And sir, I hope, given that he has standing, and he's a respected senior business people, highly respected person in our community, I know he has standing with the National Party and with the government as a senior business leader. I hope they listen to Pete Townsend, as he, I'm sure, will make representations, if he hasn't already, as a responsible community leader in Canterbury on those issues. I commend the bill, sir. I think it's one of those rare moments in the Parliament where oppositions were allowed to put up counter ideas and weren't napalmed by a government through political labels, where a government and a minister respected those ideas, listened, and I think we have a better piece of legislation. I think the people of Canterbury will say, hey, those politicians in Wellington actually now and again do listen to us, and I look forward as those wonderful, smart community leaders within my province get to take some of the reins back, get to take some of the power back, and get to put their fantastic skill base, sir, to work as we move through serving our community in this recovery.